So Russell and the family, your whole family were really pioneers in a lot of different ways, because Russell was only the third person to have ever had a transplant in BC. You've got to tell us, what was that experience like?
At that time, there were no living donors, and it always had to be someone who had passed away. The match had to be made, permission had to be given, and the kidney had to last until it got to the recipient. So it was a pretty tight time frame, and I know my dad waited for 1 and 2, and then finally the third one worked. But they had two
different times for the same operation. The first one was a motorcycle accident.
Must have been a young guy, and his parent couldn't be reached.
So Russ comes home and carry on. And then the second one came, and it wasn't suitable by the time it got to him. So, home again, wait again. And then the next time, I guess it worked because I didn't know. I was at work, and I got this call from the renal unit saying, well, Russell's on his way.
So that would have been the third call, the third time. What was that like when you got that call?
He was having it, and they assured me that it would work. And so I was happy and glad and relieved.
When was the first time you saw Russell after?
2 days, because even at that I had put on him the gown and the whole bed. I couldn't touch him. I couldn't, get within that midst of him and stuff like that. He didn't seem to have much reaction. He said, well, I've got it now. He says, I'm supposed to be out of here in 2 weeks. Well, this is the milk story. One of the things he couldn't have prior to the transplant was milk. He hadn't had a glass of milk in like 5 years, and he could hardly wait. I guess they kind of liked him, and so they pampered him and brought him a glass of milk, and he liked it so much that they brought him another one. And pretty soon he had swollen ankles. And so he had to stay in the hospital an extra 2 weeks or a week or something. So he couldn't come home. And I said, did you do that on purpose?
Being the third transplant recipient, was that anything that impacted Russell? Was there a source of pride there?
He did. He felt wonderful. He freely was happy, and now I can get on with life.
Charlotte, do you have any fond recollections of that time, first time seeing your dad?
I honestly don't remember.
He looked pretty good. I have a picture.
But he looked pretty good, and he was always a fairly dark complexion anyways, so you didn't notice like flushing up and that. You wouldn't really see a lot of it. And he always had a good suntan when he was out in the sun. So I believe in the beginning he had more energy, and he was always a pretty optimistic person. He would put on a good face anyway, so it was sometimes hard to know really what was going on.
Yeah.
Really?
That's true.
But I think the initial days, it was kind of euphoric because it finally happened and we all were hopeful. And so my expectation as a kid was that it was all done. Yeah. Off we go in the future, and it's all happy now.
Just listening to you both speak about your husband and your dad seems like a very understated gentleman, because really being a third person that's having a transplant, he was part of those who paved the way for decades and decades of improvement within renal care.
Yep.
Within BC. There's a real history there. How did things go post-transplant?
Yeah, they went wonderful for quite a while. And I guess it was a year and a half when he started to bloat here in his stomach and stuff like that. And I thought, oh no, not again. And all through that time, I was writing letters to myself because I didn't want people to know that I felt like I couldn't handle it. I didn't want Russ to know how bad I felt.
You and your husband did a wonderful job really of trying to keep things as normalized as possible.
Of the 3 kids, the boy, Richard, in a way suffered the most. I went to put him to bed one night, and Russ was still on dialysis, and he said, does my daddy ever come home? I miss my daddy. And I broke into tears. You can't explain to a 4 or 5-year-old that maybe he's not coming home. Then when he died, he just turned and it was very quiet.
And your husband was at home with the family for, was it a couple of years?
Not quite 2 years, but almost.
I always remember as a kid that it was Christmas time and he felt really ill, but we didn't know he did. He lasted right through Christmas, and I think it was the next day, maybe Boxing Day, he said, I have to go to the hospital. But he kept going right up until that day because he wanted us all to have Christmas.
Yeah,
And then he died in early January. So
January something.
That was your last Christmas
that was
together
our
as a
last
family.
Christmas together, and he was so strong and determined that I knew even as a kid that he went as far as he could go.
Yeah,
He was done. So
yeah. There was no other thing they could do.